what do I want to do for the rest of my life? Then it kind of clicked.
Am I prepared? Because if I'm not, you lose leverage.
I learned how to buy businesses. I like small family businesses. Why don't I buy a small family business?
Welcome to the Last Bolt Podcast. I'm Steve Glod, your host. Today we have on Dan Mihelich with Saliba Industries, and he is a searcher, someone who's looking to buy a business, which he ends up doing. Can't wait for you to hear the story. All right. Dan Mihelich of Saliba.
Saliba Industries, that's right.
All right. So we're going to get into it. Obviously, you have quite a journey to where you're at today, but that's why we always have these conversations, just to hear your story. So I always like to start off with just like more about you. Like,
Sure.
tell me about yourself.
Sure. Are we going all the way back? Are we going?
Well, let's do it. Where you grow up?
Yeah. Okay. So I grew up in Southern California.
Oof.
Yeah.
My wife's from there.
Long way from here.
What town?
Riverside. Town
Oh,
called
Riverside. Okay.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
wife's from Huntington. But...
Huntington. Okay. Yeah. So basically, it's not really halfway, but it's somewhere between Huntington and San Diego.
Yep.
Just like kind of more inland a little bit. So, I grew up in Riverside. Really kind of the more formative characteristic of Riverside for me was my family's business.
Oh.
So, grew up in a small family business. Grandfather started it back in the 70s. My dad and my uncle have started to kind of take over. Now my brother is actually kind of moving up, and would love to, he would love to take over at some point. But, growing up in the one store that my dad managed, it's a truck accessories company. So
Truck accessories, like parts and like what?
So, like toolboxes, running boards, if you need custom lights to go on top of your truck for pickup trucks, as opposed to semi trucks. And
aftermarket stuff.
Aftermarket stuff.
Got
correct.
Got
yeah.
it.
So the big thing back in the day was the tonneau covers and the camper shells and things that go on the back of the truck. And so, I grew up in that business. So, didn't really go to daycare after school. It was mom would pick us up and we'd go to the shop. So that's what we did. And then summers I would work, outside, doing installations, things like that. And so what was really formative, in that experience for me was being in and around a small family business. So, little did I know, but learning how my dad managed things, learning how, the small business worked, and, later, 10 years or, even 20 years later, being at large private equity backed portfolio companies, the culture difference and being able to reflect back and see kind of how those two are different.
We're jumping this. Yeah. There's a lot of questions. Okay.
There's a lot that happened in the middle.
Let's talk about that because, first, so your grandfather started it?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how did he fall in? Or what's the story? Do you know the story there?
I know bits and pieces. I don't know the exact details, but he's kind of like the OG searcher. So he bought the company.
Oh, he bought it.
He bought it back in the I don't remember what year. I really should, but back in the 70s, he bought it. And they were making like the first camper shells that went on the back of trucks.
Right.
So it's kind of hard to describe without a picture, but you think of a pickup truck, today, and it was the camper that goes on the back, and there was really no one manufacturer that made those back then. It was just kind of, they were made custom basically wherever you went. So my grandfather, bought this outfit that was making them. My grandmother, worked there. She was doing a lot of the like actual sewing for some of the textiles that went in the actual camper shell. So, and then that transformed over time. Dedicated manufacturers for these things popped up. Then they became more of like a retailer / distributor / installer, and picked up, product lines here and there. And even after that transformation, it's transformed even more. So,
well, wait, let's pause and
Sure.
What is a searcher? Because the audience, a lot of people don't know. So OG searcher, I know we'll get to that, but like what is a searcher? And
what is a searcher? There's so many different different ways that you can become a searcher.
Yep.
So it's in
Yep.
in his case, a kind of opportunity presented itself to him, and
Was he working at the business and you're like, oh, I'll sell it
no,
to you or
I
what?
mean, he was kind of a serial entrepreneur to begin with. So he did, he owned Taco Bell's, he owned there was another Tasty Freeze, I think it was called. It was like a
Tasty. I know what Tasty
yeah, yeah,
freezes.
something,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Right.
he was kind of a serial entrepreneur in his own right. This opportunity popped up, and he went after it. So I call him OG Searcher because he bought a company back before it was cool to look into buying companies. So, but today a searcher is more of a dedicated somebody who's out there looking, not being opportunistic, but out there and really trying to find something, turning over every rock and a operating profitable long-standing business to buy and run. So that's what it is today. And that's kind of that's what I did, 2.5 years ago. So
Right. Well, let's go back to still the story of he starts, all right, more people get into the business.
yeah,
Obviously, this is a growing market.
yeah.
He starts selling other things. He does installations.
Hmm.
When does it then become, does your dad grow up in the business? Does he have brothers? I mean, because
Yeah.
I always find it's the dynamic of family,
Yep.
like who's in, who's out. Obviously we're going to get to why maybe you're not in California anymore,
Yeah.
but like it evolved to your dad taking over, or was it with someone else?
Yeah.
Or
So there's now two stores. So
okay.
my grandfather bought it when it was just one store in Fullerton, California.
Oh yeah, sure.
That location still exists. And then when my dad, when he was, I don't know, 11, 12, 13, just started working there.
As one does.
Yeah, as one does. And when it was time for my dad to, I don't know exactly when, but I think it was after he and my mom got married, maybe even before, but opened up a second location in Riverside. And so, since working at the Fullerton location in his, early teens to today, my dad's been in the business, his whole life. So, um, that's my dad's story. My uncle, I think he did some other things, worked some other jobs, but he's very similar story. Been in the family business ever since. So, my uncle manages now the Fullerton store. My dad manages the Riverside store, and yeah, that's just kind of how it's
So
been since
may I
ever.
ask, because I want to still sitting here, stay on this topic where it's like, all right, they opened another, which was years ago.
Yeah.
Why not more? And did they did they grow the business just one to one because they opened a new store from your grandfather, or has the business, grew?
It's grown in that they've taken on different types of work, but I think to answer your first question, there's no more brothers really. So
Okay, that's a good answer.
yeah.
Okay.
I mean my brother. So yeah, my brother would like to see it expand even further. He's got that drive behind him, and he's got the passion for the family business. But I think because of various family dynamics, my dad and my uncle, they haven't they're good at managing their stores. They haven't really taken over that ownership role yet because my grandfather still sits in that seat. So the
Oh,
things
okay.
like
Wild
all the
card.
back end stuff like taxes, finance,
Right.
even some of the HR stuff, kind of the bookkeeping even. So a lot of that kind of still is held at my grandfather's level. Hasn't been passed down to my dad and my uncle
Oh,
yet.
yeah, we see
So
that all the
then
time.
now when my brother wants to take over, a lot of that stuff's going to have to go down two generations, and that's a lot of either learning from my dad and my uncle, them learning it so that they can then pass it on to my brother, or just skipping it over to my brother. So we don't know what's going to happen yet. But yeah, that's kind of where things sit at the moment.
All right, so why did you move from California?
Why did I move from
It is
California?
Southern California. It's hard to move.
Yeah. So well, I think to answer a similar question, why haven't I stepped into the family business since?
I should ask that probably.
The My mom always told me, you will not work in the family business. I think she just wanted me to go out and do different things or whatever. I don't, but it's worked out. But why did I leave California is because I was going to Cal State Fullerton at the time, California State School, got an accounting degree. And, 'cause I started as kind of a general business major. And then they let you choose after 2 years what your concentration is going to be. So marketing, law, accounting, things like that. And after taking the first accounting course, it just kind of made sense to me. I could see other kids who were having problems with it. It's not necessarily math heavy, but it's more of like another language. And so it more or less was clicking for me. I understood it, and decided to pursue that. So third or fourth year of my undergrad comes around. Started learning more about what it takes to become a CPA. How do I sit for the exams, all this stuff. And end of my third year, the I think it's the AICPA is what it's called, but whoever manages the CPA exams changed the requirements. So now instead of taking 4 years worth of credit hours, you have to take 5. And so that kind of throws a monkey wrench in your plans when you're already 3 years into your undergrad. So I had a decision to make. Do I just take a 5th year of undergrad, take summer school, just get those extra credit hours, or do something else? And so I decided that, let's go for a master's. So if I'm going to take a 5th year of school, get a second degree. And so then I started looking around, what are the schools that the big 4 accounting firms recruit from? I looked around. DePaul is actually one of them. So I applied to DePaul. So strong recruitment in DePaul's network. Applied, got in, and then came out here, more or less on a whim, and ended up staying. So
So you go from the cold, or from the warmth to the cold, but obviously there was a plan in place. It's interesting though, because you, coming from a small business family and just business entrepreneurship, you did try to, you went into accounting, very predictable. But then you're also like, how do I plan to get even less risk, which is I need to go big 4.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. It's a little bit on the other side of the spectrum.
Yes, exactly. And so I think and interesting that you mentioned risk, because that's actually what ended up turning me away from it. I ended up not going to work for the big 4. At the end of my master's program, that's when you start looking into, okay, what does life as an accountant really look like? And so, I start learning more about what it's like to be an auditor, what it's like to go into tax, and nothing about it was appealing to me.
You're not saying they're the most fun people on the planet.
Actually, I've
auditors are raging out there,
right? I've actually met some really cool people at accounting firms, and looking back, I'm like, why did you choose to go into that field? But okay, but I started to realize how you're much less in control, you're much less forward thinking, you're much less critically thinking than you are, auditing one line on a Fortune 500 company's balance sheet. And that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to have more under my purview. I wanted to be more of a mover and shaker rather than being backwards looking and auditing something that somebody else had done. So I wanted to pivot. Didn't really know what to do. Ended up, of all places, looking on Craigslist for job openings.
Oh, I love this.
Yeah, this is back in like 2013, I think. So it wasn't much in the way of like online job searching. But there was a small brokerage firm that was looking for interns, and so I ended up applying and got the position. And it was, looking back now, I know it was more or less like a really tiny lower middle market sweatshop.
Okay.
And but it was a great experience for me, because I learned how to get on the phone with business owners. I learned how to run little mini DCF models and Excel, and just the fundamentals of Excel and analysis, and putting together mini sims basically of this is what the business is, this is what it does, here are the opportunities, here are the risks, and putting that together for a business owner. It was more in line with what I wanted to do. It was critically thinking about the business, the strategic opportunity. How do I take what this business owner is telling me about their business and like think bigger, and how I can sell this to somebody else, or how I can take it to a lender and build a story and get financing for this company.
And I want to make sure, because the audience won't, we're trying to also demystify a little
Sure.
bit of finance.
Yeah.
So M&A sweatshop means that what I hear, you were kind of acting almost on a transaction advisor, and I'll explain that too. But why don't you, in your own, like, super simple,
Sure.
like what was it what did the firm do?
Yeah.
And like a third grader can understand.
Sure.
And then also like what I think you described pretty well.
Yeah.
It's kind of like transaction advisory.
Yeah. And why I use the term sweatshop, I'll get into that too, because not all firms are like this. I want to be clear. But it 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 was a firm that was selling the opportunity for a business owner, a lot of times who was in financial distress, to either get a loan, to either recapitalize or refinance their existing loans because they're underwater on them, or even an exit because they didn't have any other options. And so it was a setup where they had cold callers. They had kind of people out in the field who would go visit these targets, I guess you would call it, these potential clients. And then once it made that its way through the sales funnel, the firm got the mandate, then it would come to me and I would put together the whole, the business case basically, and the more or less sim and the financial model, and then pass it off to the next guy who was talking to the either the financing universe or the buyer universe, whichever one the client wanted.
Got it.
So, the reason why I called this firm a sweatshop is because they weren't exactly interested in getting an outcome for the client. It was more of
The retainer fees.
let's get as many retainer fees as we can in the door.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that wasn't the most ethical business practice, that, come to find out. And I subsequently left once I got fortunately, I was able to get into a, more of a normal middle market sell side investment bank. But, yeah, it was a great, formative experience for me of finding out that I liked that type of work. I was able to use my accounting knowledge. I was able to use my, even some of the experiences growing up in the family business of applying that to somebody else's situation.
And for someone who's not a finance or accounting guy, the huge value add from your family business, growing up in the family business, is there's these blind spots that you can't see in the spreadsheets.
Exactly.
Where ultimately small business is always run by people, and there's not many, and we're not all Harvard MBA. So this is the roster and this is what we have. And sometimes you can't quite see the real picture. And, yeah, I hear that. So at the end of the day, and I feel the same way. It's just such a stimulating experience to figure out every business is different.
Yeah.
Even if you look at the same business doing the same exact thing, it's run by different people. It might be in a different geography.
Yeah.
And yada, yada. Okay. So you go to this then middle market, sell side firm. Tell me more about that.
Yeah. So I was at this firm. There's a firm called D.A. Davidson. They had just started an industrials practice here in the Loop.
Still around?
I don't think the industrial practice is still around. They do have a location here in the Loop, I believe, but they're more focused on financial institutions and kind of community bank M&A and things like that. But I got that job. That was really my first kind of big break into
the walled garden.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure.
Because here I am coming from a very, very non-traditional path into investment banking, which is, a lot of people think of Ivy League and
Yeah.
Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley. And I kind of came from a completely different angle of, just working my way into a middle market boutique and
It's competitive as heck.
Yeah. And
did you have to do the banking hours?
I did. Yeah.
You
so
did.
I did that. It wasn't 100 hours, but maybe it was 75, 80.
Right.
It was a lot of grinding of just mind numbing work. most of the time.
Well, can
Um,
we talk about some of that mind-numbing
yeah,
work?
absolutely. It was moving private equity groups logos around on
Oh God,
PowerPoint sheets to make.
you stole my thunder. So I always,
Yeah,
I always make fun of my partner
yeah,
because, he did Rothschild and he would be, again, people don't calculate. You're working 9 to 9. That's 60 hours Monday
hmm
through Friday, and then you're doing another 10 hours over the weekend. I mean,
yeah,
you're grinding, right? That's 80.
yeah,
But I always joke around. He'd be like, "Yeah, we're changing the font at 3 in the morning on the sim,"
yeah.
and I'm like, it's hilarious because you're making great money, but is that the best value? Is that the best value to that?
It's not. It's really not. And so that's why I, I took the opportunity, and I don't think everybody in that position does this, but I really took the opportunity to go above and beyond and look at the guys above me and say, "Hey, what are they doing? They're the ones running the LBO models. They're the ones building the spreadsheets and actually thinking about what goes into the deck." And so I just ask questions, pick their brains. Hey, why does this go there? Hey, can you show me how to build an LBO model? Like, do you build it from scratch? Do you start with a template? Oh, you build it from scratch. How do you do that? And that plus YouTube plus, just soaking in as much knowledge as you can to become like the next guy above you, to the point where you learn enough so you can start questioning why they're
Why are
doing
we doing
why
right?
yeah why they're
And
doing.
this is what, 2016?
This is 2014.
2014.
Yeah, 2014.
Got it.
So I think November 2014 is when I had finished my program, finished the Masters of Accountancy program, and then started this position. And so yeah, that just use that. Like I said, that was my break into that world. And so from there, I was able to leverage that. My next position was I started February of 2016, smaller firm, but much more experienced, because when I started at DA Davidson, it was a budding practice. And so there wasn't,
What does that mean?
there wasn't a pipeline the MD had just started. There wasn't a pipeline of deals that I was able to jump in and start working on. I was starting pitches. And so that's why I was
Oh,
doing a lot of that, just grinding through PowerPoint, of moving things around at 3 in the morning, because
sure.
it was a lot of pitching. And so yeah, it wasn't a lot of transaction experience, but it was kind of my first, get my feet wet in that world. 2016 is when I really started to take off and learn not just the technical skills, but everything else that comes along with, thinking critically about a business, operating, and strategic and things like that, and the soft skills, how to talk to people, how to you know as a 24-year-old, how to go out to dinner with a 65-year-old client who's 3 times your age and a million times your net worth. So
What are the conversations like? How do you connect to a,
how do you
well, I mean, you gotta
yeah
imagine that just growing up in a blue collar setting, though,
yeah
in a small business, there is I would talk my own book of like just some sort of, we all try to connect early
yeah
and often to
yeah
try to build trust, but was that maybe helpful?
yeah it was yeah, find any common thread you possibly can. Fortunately, most old business owners like scotch. I happen to like scotch.
I used
most
to.
most old business owners like golf.
Yeah.
I'm a golfer. So things like that. One he really liked, he was really into music and kind of like indie type music, and I was like, oh, perfect. Like, we'll go down that thread. So really finding a common thread of things you can talk about over dinner, when you're halfway across the country, completely out of your element, and
Sure.
talking to somebody that's, you don't have that much in common with. So it was a great experience learning how to do that, connect with people, because like you said earlier, a lot of this is about connecting with people. And
Yeah.
even in my current role, talking about my background coming through accounting, finance, still being able to connect with guys like my employees who are effectively tradesmen, which CNC machinists are tradesmen, hourly workers. They've got their families. They're just trying to make a living wage to feed their families. And I can fortunately connect to that because I grew up in a small family business where
Yeah.
my parents and grandparents were trying to do exactly that.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, fortunately that was able to bring it all together.
So, well, let's talk like you leave this middle market
Sure.
after a few years, and then what?
Yeah, so left there after, because like I said, I wasn't getting as much deal experience. It was a lot of pitching. So once you're kind of in that role, you're like, hey, I'm in my mid 20s. Like I really want to get some deal experience under my belt. So start looking around for other boutiques, other kind of firms where I'll fit in. Because again, I had a very non-traditional path into investment banking. So yeah, I found another boutique. The company was called Finia Group. Great group of guys that I was able to join there. That's where I got the transaction experience. So
Got it.
that's where fortunately for me, and I think this benefited me as a searcher in that I wasn't at Rothschild, I wasn't at Morgan Stanley, so I wasn't one guy on a deal team of 6 or 7. I was one guy on a deal team of sometimes 2. So I was able to see a lot more of the transaction, have a lot more of a say, and just get a lot of that exposure. Granted, it's a much smaller deal, but then again, if you're a searcher, that's kind of more in line with what
Right.
you want anyway. So
What kind of deal size were they working on?
anywhere, smallest deal we did was around 8 million. Biggest deal we did was around it didn't close, but it was around $200 million.
Okay.
So, for us, that was a big deal with 12 people in the firm. So, but yeah, that was a lot of, a pretty wide range. And fortunately, a lot of these were very similar stories to the same type of deal you'd go after if you're a searcher. Either the founder started it or his family started it, decades ago. And, yeah, either closely held or held by 1 or 2 partners, pretty small management team, anywhere from $750,000 to 15 million of EBITDA.
Mhm.
So, yeah, very, very applicable to kind of what you're looking for as a searcher. And so I think that getting that deal experience, working with those types of owners, founders.
Yeah, you got the reps in.
Yeah, exactly. Starting to learn their language and then getting the reps in of, okay, what do you look at when because as a transaction advisor, you have to put yourself in the buyer's shoes or the, whoever the counterparty is going to be, whether it's financing for a refi or a buyer for a buyout or a recap. So you have to put yourself in the buyer's shoes. So, okay, you start thinking like a buyer. Okay, I have my client. This is what their HR benefits situation looks like. This is what their insurance, IT, tax, and I have to take this, package it up, and anticipate the questions that the buyer are going to ask, so that I can get ahead of them and make my client look as good as possible. So that was starting to get the reps in of how do you diligence a business? What are the things that you look for? It's not just what do the financials look like. It's what's the story behind the financials. What are the employees going to expect in an ownership transition? What are what are things you have to keep the same? What are things you have to change? What are the opportunities? And so just building further on my previous years of experience of thinking critically about the business. Now I have to, even though I'm on the sell side of the table, I have to become a buyer and think about my clients that way. So that was a very very important experience in being able to diligence my own opportunity.
Well, and we, at the end of the day, it's also kind of a bit of a game theory because it's a long negotiation that how well can I think through what the opponent, because that's really what they are, is going to ask, and am I prepared? Because if I'm not and I'm on skates, you lose leverage, which ultimately means less value.
Yeah.
So how many years were you there? And I mean,
that was 4 years. So February of 2016 to March of 2020.
COVID. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically, so that brings me to the next transition so I was at Finia Group, sell side investment bank, from February 2016 to March of 2020. March of 2020, I got a job at a private equity backed packaging company doing corporate development. So
nice.
I was
so now you're on the buy side.
I was now the buyer. Yeah.
Okay.
So that was kind of a nice natural transition.
And was that something you wanted to kind of do just in general?
Yes. Yeah. So I this was all before I was thinking about search or anything
Right.
like that.
But it was just like, hey,
Yeah,
so one curious person
yeah.
does. Yeah.
So, I didn't, I wanted to start getting into creating the content rather than kind of being the agent, so to speak. So
Yeah.
like as a sell side advisor, you are the agent to someone else's story. When you're on the buy side, you are, um, you're creating the story, right? So, granted, it's not your money, it's not your company, but you're at least helping build something, right? And so that's really the theme of what I wanted to get to, and kind of why I was shying away from accounting, is that I wanted to build something. That was kind of the common thread out of everything I was searching for, was I want to build something. And auditing books wasn't that. So that kind of led me into the investment banking, thinking critically, thinking forward. How do you grow something? Then getting into the buy side of, now I'm the buyer. Now I'm working to build something with, me and my team. So, March of 2020, literally 1 week before COVID shut down is when I started.
It's perfect timing. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect timing, right? So that ended up being more of a work from home job, which, we'll find out was perfect for being able to search on the side.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a great experience because it was able to build off of everything I had worked on in the past 6 years. All the financial modeling, all of the critical thinking, the strategic planning, the finding the opportunities and things like that. Plus actually running the diligence. So, now I'm the one in the hot seat of, okay, I have to work with the Q of E provider and really understand what's going on, and then relay that to the CEO. And same thing with benefits and insurance, and then all the way, once the diligence streams are done, all the way to working on negotiating the purchase agreement and any other agreements that go along with the deal. Now, if there's an ongoing supply agreement with, we did some carve out deals, and if there's an ongoing supply agreement with the former parent, and now, the asset you just bought, things like that. So that was kind of the tie it all together and really learn how to buy something.
And walk, like, just tell me high level, and also for the audience, what was, if you can share, this size of this company that's acquiring, every private equity firm is different, potentially different thesis, and just like, what was this particular,
sure,
what were they doing?
Yeah. So and it's kind of interesting too, because when I started, the company was under one private equity consortium ownership, and then got sold about 2 years later.
The actual entire entity?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it was interesting seeing that transition. But when I first started, it was very, very growth oriented. This was kind of during COVID. So that had its own challenges because, the world shut down. So for the first 6 months, I wasn't doing any M&A at all. But the private equity owners were hungry to get back in the game. So we found ways to get deals done, things that were in process as I had joined, finding ways to do the deal, over Teams basically, and get it done during COVID. And so that it was very interesting seeing that that kind of hunger from that private equity ownership. And then over time, as the business was sold, COVID had its ups and downs, especially for the packaging world. So the world stopped. Everything went to hand sanitizing packaging. That had its own boom and bust cycle. Then there was, the pantry destocking after everyone had loaded up. So then now that people had everything in their pantry, grocery stores weren't selling anything. So all the packaging was still sitting on the shelves. So our customers weren't selling anything. So then that stopped, and then that kind of went away. And then it was kind of like gangbusters.
Well, this is the thing that people, I think, I find super interesting, which I can tell you do too, is like the actual supply chain of it, where people forget that America is, I believe, the third largest country in the world, but 350 million people.
Yeah.
It's hard to run an ecosystem efficiently to service 350 million people. Now, I could go off on a tangent about, people try to do apples to apples comparisons with us versus like European countries. I'm like, while we might have different methodologies, like Germany is 4 times smaller than us. So to do it at our scale, if something breaks, if something happens, there's a lot that can go wrong, right? So you're describing that type of, and that's really what I'm starting to familiarize myself with, but really just I get obsessed with too, is just like small business, middle America, like they do one thing that's, hey, if you're not producing or offering that service in that chain, that some people are affected.
Yes.
Right. So, okay. So all right, you get some time and let's get to the story. Cause this is great.
Yeah.
You start to look for businesses and starting your search. Why did you want to do it? Was it like always just the entrepreneurship? Like I'm going to do a business someday or?
Yeah, it was, like I mentioned earlier, the common thread has been wanting to build something.
Yeah.
And so, I got to a point where, I was helping to build this portfolio company through add-on acquisitions. That got to a point where the more or less I wasn't getting that fix anymore, So like it was very repetitive. I didn't have as much autonomy as I had hoped at some point, and so I kind of hit a ceiling. And so that plus a couple other things, like I mentioned, the ownership changed, culture changed, the company got bigger, and so I kind of hit this inflection point of, what do I want to do for the rest of my life? I didn't want to do accounting, so I got out of that for various reasons. I wasn't too sure if I wanted to do mergers and acquisitions for the rest of my life. What do I want to do for the rest of my life? So I thought back, I was like, okay, I have big corporate experience, don't really like that. Thought back to my family's business, small business environment. That seems a lot more appealing to me.
Why?
More autonomy. You can move the needle. If you're a heavy hitter in a small business, you're moving the needle a lot more than if you're a heavy hitter in a large corporate company. Obviously, it's nice to be a heavy hitter, but like you've got a lot more sway. The culture is much more people focused. Large companies can say anything they want about wanting to be people focused. But at the end of the day, if the ownership isn't on the floor with you, it's, held in somebody's retirement on the other side of the country. Like it's kind of hard to align incentives with the people that are on the floor doing the work every day. And so that was really what I saw being at a private equity backed company, was decisions that were made did not necessarily benefit the companies that we were buying, or, the people that are in the warehouses handling the packaging every day, or to an extent, like leadership tried to do what they could, but at the end of the day, like the money lies where the money lies. The C-suite can only do so much to benefit the actual people in the company. So that's what I wanted to get away from. And small, closely held, small family business, you can make decisions that might not be the most the profit maximizing decision, but it's what you want to do because it's best for, your colleagues. It's best for your employees. It's best for the people that you're walking into the shop and seeing every day. So that was way more appealing to me. So I thought about that. I thought about, okay, what have I done for the last 10 years? What technical skills do I have? Am I going to start an M&A firm? I could, but then I'm stuck back in M&A, and that's not what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. So I was like, okay, I learned how to buy businesses. I like small family businesses. Why don't I buy a small family business? So that was kind of the put 2 and 2 together for me. So learn more about search, got hooked up on with the community and Twitter at the time, and really learn more about, this is an actual thing that people do. Reading, I forget who the guys are. I think they were anonymous at the time on Twitter, but just like reading their stories and like, oh, there's people who have done this. They put up blog posts. They're sharing absolute gold on Twitter about their experiences and what they've gone through. And it's like, okay, this is a thing that people can do. Like it's been done before.
And part of, this podcast is all about hearing the stories of a lot of small businesses. It's also trying to empower, like, anyone can do this.
Yeah.
Now, when I say anyone's, like, if you have the work ethic,
Yeah.
and I mean, we are capitalists, we are Americans, that small businesses are typically the ones who, have the extra house in the lake,
Hmm.
may have, if they like nice things, may want a Bentley and can afford it because like, you can be a big fish in a small pond and do really well at what you do, but like, you can also be very successful. Okay. So, all right, you walk me through the search.
Sure.
And so now
Sure.
you've made the decision.
Yep. Yeah. So the search, it was difficult. I mean, at times I thought I was like, oh, I'm just wasting time. Like it's, I'm not going to find anything. Like there's
Well,
everything's
did you
been
have like
picked
a
over.
thesis though of like,
I did.
Okay.
So after reading books like Buy Then Build, the Harvard Business Review book, I put together my buy box, right? So I really what I landed on was I wanted to do something that was more in the industrial realm. I didn't want to do something that was focused on, information work or computer work or your entire world lives in your laptop, because I had already done that. I didn't want to do that anymore. I wanted to make physical things that can be shipped, and that's the deliverable, right? So another reason I landed on that is because I was done with professional service. I wanted to not be woken up at 11 p.m. on a Saturday night because somebody needs a deck somewhere, right? Somebody needs an email sent. Like, granted, I still end up working on the weekends, but
Well, you are an owner.
I don't. It's
Well, it's for yourself and not someone else.
exactly that helps too. But it is more predictable. So customer, if we're working on something on Friday, all right, we'll ship it Monday. Like they're not even gonna they're not gonna be in on the weekend anyway. So like it's okay. Or our customer knows, can tell us, hey, ship it Tuesday. Like it's a little bit more predictable. And I wanted to be more in the physical realm than in the digital realm. So I wanted to do something industrial, and I wanted to do something business to business, because I wanted to focus on 10, 20, 30 customers, not 20,000, 30,000 customers, as opposed to business to consumer selling.
And only looking in Chicago, or?
I looked around. I looked around in the Midwest.
So you were willing to move. Now, do you have a wife?
Yes.
You do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Married, have a dog, no kids.
Okay, no kids. All right. Yet, or?
Thinking about it.
Okay. Okay. Hey,
the wife's she's a little bit against the idea at the moment, but
okay.
we'll see.
Okay.
We'll see.
It's a slow burn.
Yeah, exactly. But so I was looking in the Midwest. The first deal that I really got a hold of was just through a broker, because I realized that for what I'm doing, there's I guess, to back up, there's kind of two routes the searchers go down, right? There's their broker route, or there's the I forget what they call it, but more or less cold calling and trying to find a target through that way. And reading other people's stories, reading the HBR book, guys would literally hire like dozens of interns and just cold call.
Yeah.
And that did not sound appealing to me, to have people just working, likely unpaid or paid very little, to go knock on doors and find something that might be worth chasing after. And more often than not, I found people that you reach out to out of the blue often have very unrealistic expectations about what their business is worth, how the process is going to go. And a lot of it's just not worth chasing, and a lot of man hours and effort spent for potentially nothing. So I ended up going the broker route, made friends with a lot of brokers, told them my story, told them what I'm looking for. And it did end up resonating with a lot of them. They understood that I had experience in mergers and acquisitions, had experience with a small family business. That's what I want to do. So they were, willing to share SIMs and give me the NDA and give me the financials.
And that sort of old school model works because at the end of the day, they only have so much time, and so they're betting on I'll call it a jockey, where, hey, this is a good buyer.
Mm-hmm.
presumably has capital and sharp. So it's an easy sell to a lot of the people that ultimately they're trying to
Yeah.
win over as a mandate.
Right.
So I get that. Yeah.
Yeah. So ended up going the broker route. Looked at a deal in the southern suburbs of Chicago, plumbing company. Ended up not getting too far. I submitted an LOI, didn't get too far with that. I think it was a strategic, was able to offer way more than I ever could.
Yeah.
So it is what it is. The second one I went after was actually in Grand Rapids. It was a commercial painting company. So it was a little bit out of my buy box because I wanted something that kind of delivers, I wanted to be making things, but at least it was, it was painting. It was, more or less a set schedule, business to business, handful of customers. So, a little bit out of the strike zone, but that was okay with me. Great company, great margins. Got down the diligence path pretty far, actually. Submitted an LOI. The buyer liked me after I went out on a site visit. The seller liked me after I went out for a site visit, met his team. The sticking point in that deal was working capital.
Yeah.
It always is, right? It was actually a sticking point in the deal that I was eventually able to close. But the amount of accountants and long-time experienced business owners that don't understand working capital absolutely blows my mind.
Well, I mean, you can have a side conversation with my partner, but
that's a whole 90 minute conversation itself.
Two reasons that I've come to understand are always the sticking points. One, the indemnifications. What are they liable for? It's this back and forth. And then two, working capital.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, they're 180 days late. They're going to pay me.
Yeah.
That's my money.
Yeah.
Not exactly.
Yeah.
And there's this dogfight. We didn't talk about, buy box though. What size companies were you looking for? And it was a self-funded, so you were going to go SBA.
Yeah, self-funded SBA. I was very fortunate that I had built up enough capital through bonuses in the from the investment banking years, a little bit of stock portfolio on the side, actually a little bit of crypto portfolio on the side too. Yeah.
We can go another direction.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
a big crypto guy. So
I played around in that world for a while. But yeah, I built up kind of a little nest egg, basically based off of what I had built up, and what I was able to model in as an SBA, doing the golden 1.5 DSCR, really put me into a 500, 600, 700,000 EBITDA business that I could get for, 3.5, 4 times.
Yep.
And so, that's what I ended up doing. I ended up paying 3.5 times for the business I bought. It did have a seller note. Yeah.
How did you find it? Right. So that deal doesn't go through. It's like, oh God, it was so close. And we just couldn't get it across the line.
Yep.
And this other deal, which by the way, audience doesn't know, we found each other, I think on Twitter.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like I found my partner. It's funny. I guess it might be a conversation another time. But yeah. So we connect and we met. It'll be 2.5 years ago. Downtown at Lone Wolf, and I believe there were murmurs. If my memory serves, you even said, "Hey, I think this deal up in the North Shore." I think you told me about it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't done yet. So how did you find that?
Biz by sell.
Oh, okay. All right.
Of all the places to find a actual legitimate operating industrial, profitable, good business
listed by himself,
listed by a broker.
Listed by a broker.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And to my benefit, it honestly wasn't marketed very well because it's an interesting company.
Well, that's
because,
typical.
Yeah. Yeah. So it worked out in my favor. I'm not mad about it whatsoever. But it's kind of and having visited it at the time and after being in it for 2 years, I understand why it's difficult to market because it's a CNC machine shop.
Yeah. What do you guys do?
So CNC machining, but they also build machines.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's why it's kind of hard to understand. So if you come, if you're from my background and you're finance, accounting, you hear CNC machining and machine building, you're like, wait, what? They both have machine in that. What's going on? Like, what is this? So, I didn't know the first thing about CNC machining. Did some research, be like, okay, there's these machines and they got a spindle, they make stuff. And then I see some videos of the machines that they built. I'm like, okay, that's also a machine. Like there's, things moving around and it's making stuff. So like, what's the difference? So that's why it's so hard to market, because if you're not in that field, you've never run a CNC before, or you've never, worked in automation machinery before, you don't really understand the nuances and the differences. Now that I'm in it, I'm like, they're night and day different.
Well, yeah.
But
and I think for the audience,
yeah,
so CNC building a machine is like, okay, pretty obvious. Like you build the actual machine. And then the other is literally the CNC machining is the cutting. Those types of machines
Yep.
will cut, will to whatever specification you're trying to. It could be a part.
Yeah.
Right. But you need this thing that cuts metal.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And it's interesting that it does do both.
Mhm.
But it's also, I'm just thinking, if I was a search, I'd be like, they don't seem very focused,
Yeah. Yeah.
but so it was interesting, obviously a decent price. And roughly what was it doing at the time in like revenue or like?
Just under 3 million in revenue
Okay.
at the time.
Right.
Yeah. So, pretty sizable.
Right.
It's still a small business, but for somebody with, my means at the time, going, self-funded, solo,
Yep.
kind of right in the strike zone in terms of size.
So did the broker, or what was your thesis on how can I grow this to 10 million?
Yeah.
And did you buy the real estate?
No, it's leased. Still
Okay,
leased.
leased. But was there a capacity issue? So like, it's doing roughly 3 million in sales. Like, can we grow, or do I got to lease more? And this
Yeah.
is stuff that like, but of course, any buyer
Mhm.
is like, what's the utilization? What's the capacity that I can get to? Because how much can I grow? I got to get, I want to grow the business.
Yeah. So after learning more about the business, well, first after walking the floor, then it kind of clicked. I saw what the CNC machines were doing. I saw what the machines were that they were building. It became much more clear as to why it makes sense to have both under one roof. After doing some diligence, after watching a million YouTube videos on CNC and how that all works, my thesis on how to grow it was the automation machining, the automated machinery, the assembly automation portion of the business is the growth engine, because the CNC machining side is very capex intensive. It's if you're gonna add another machine, add another CNC machine, it's you're starting at 100,000.
Yeah.
So because it's just very capex intensive. It's very difficult to find machinists, CNC programmers. That's a story we'll get into that story a little later, but that's very difficult to grow relative to the automation side of the business. So at the time, the business was doing about 2 to 3 automation builds a year, and that's potentially half the annual revenue right there. So
for what kinds of customers? So who were they selling these?
The ones they were building at the time are for a like a medical / food science company. So doing, basically putting together swabs for clean rooms. So for testing clean rooms. So a pretty niche audience.
And was the owner a machinist, or tell me a little bit about that owner?
Yeah. So I don't know the exact details of the story. But he started in machining, CNC machining. I think he became a CNC machinist for an automation machine builder at the time, and then it just kind of
He had some relationships, and clearly, like, yeah,
and he was able to work into the actual machine building side of his employer. So he was he was machining the parts for these automation builds. Ended up starting to take over the actual building of the automation machinery. Then he ended up buying a CNC machine for himself, putting it in his garage, taking scrap parts, pieces of scrap home from his employer to make parts for Abbott, AbbVie, Pfizer on the side, up on the North Shore.
Yeah.
And so he was kind of a machine builder by day and a CNC machinist by night. And then just that kind of dovetailed into, going full-time CNC machinist out of his garage to getting a space of his own, moving his CNC machines there and starting to build his own machinery.
And what year? This is, you know what? And how old is he?
Uh,
60s?
Mid late 60s, yeah.
Okay. I think this is why that generation's like, oh, these young kids, they don't work hard.
Mm-hmm.
Dude was grinding.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's working like, 16 hours a day.
Yeah,
and
this
this
is
person's like,
with
I'm going to work
kids.
from home today.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. With kids,
with
right.
kids taking
No
them to
money.
hockey practice,
Right.
school, like all that stuff. It's
a sacrifice. Yeah.
it's absolute sacrifice. The superpower of that generation is the ability to tolerate pain.
They're nuts. They're absolutely out of their mind.
And it's massive respect to them.
Yeah.
Because I think our generation is a little less tolerant to the pain, but we'll find ways to work around it. We'll and so I think that's kind of the
Right. They'd
difference.
go
that I've
straight
seen.
head on, and
Yeah.
we're trying to like maybe take a little circuitous
Yeah,
path to doing a little bit
yeah.
more efficient.
Yeah.
But okay, so that's kind of how he kind of fell into it and was running the business for how long till you?
Since the early 80s. Yeah. So
Wow.
it's been a hot minute.
It's been a run.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and then his customers were still, again, selling to like pharmaceutical.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the machining side, was that any different kinds of customers or kind of, because it's kind of like verticalized.
Yeah,
almost.
as far as I know, Motorola was a big customer back in the day. Obviously they're not as big of a player as they used to be. Motorola, our biggest customer still is in the oil and gas space.
Really?
Yeah. So and this
Talk about different.
yeah, the stories of learning how they had the former owner built a relationship with one engineer, and he bounced around from company to company and kind of took Saliba with them, and so it was
that's cool.
yeah, it's just kind of
relationships.
Yeah, exactly, relationships. And so now that I'm in the hot seat building my own relationships, and with guys that are our age, and those engineers will move around and trying to do the same thing. So
how many employees are there? Or have you grown? But how many when you took over? And
yeah, I think there were 10 or 11 when I took over. We're at 14 now.
how was the transition? Like, you're the outside looking in, and I'm imagining you built a relationship with the owner. How long did it take to kind of convince him, like, I'm the guy?
Yeah. So first time I sat down with him, it's nerve wracking, right? You got this guy who's built a company, heavily technical. He's done everything, and here I am, an accountant sitting across from him.
Right.
Like he's probably looking at me like, who the hell is this kid? Like, what's he doing here? So at that point, you just got to be straight up. Be like, look, I'm not a manufacturing guy, but I'm here to buy a company that is already, it's got the foundation built, it's got the team in place, the customers in place. Like, I'm here to take over a role that is more administrative, strategic, kind of higher level, to where the business can run without me if it needs to. Granted, that's never the case with the company this size, but I that was part of the buy box. That, I guess you could say it was part of the buy box, but it's really kind of table stakes for any searcher is finding a company that is like that, where that situation exists, because you can't really take over a landscaping company where you're the one mowing the lawns every day, or you're the
Ideally
one doing
not.
the tree. Yeah.
Right.
So
you want to buy a job.
yeah, like granted, buying a company, even if you are buying something where the team's in place, you're still buying a job, but it's a different kind of job.
Yeah.
You're not buying the day-to-day revenue generating. You're buying the strategic, you're buying the administrative and all the back end stuff. So I basically was straight up with him, and his son, because his son's still in the company, still is the general manager of the company today. So that was a separate relationship I had to build.
Sorry, I skipped over that. So he just didn't feel like maybe his son could be the guy.
Yeah.
or-
So that's an interesting story, because the son, obviously he felt, like, hey, why isn't my dad giving me the company? Right. That's the,
I would ask that.
yeah, that's
too.
like, I had to take that straight on. I had to confront that straight on. What he told me was that he didn't want that risk profile. He saw his
with
dad
their relationship.
with that much, capital at risk, with that much, hanging over his head. He saw his dad coming home in 2008, 2009, stressed out of his mind. I think he had ended up losing some real estate in 2008, 2009 because of, just the way the market went.
Yeah.
So he didn't want that. he had separately the son had separately gone into law enforcement, to try to build his own career. Kind of right before the deal took place, he wanted to get out of law enforcement because COVID and law enforcement was kind of a weird mix at the time. So he was kind of like 1 year of full-time employment at
I
the
see.
company. So it wasn't, he didn't really have like, he had kind of grown up in the company, just like I grew up in my family's company. So he knew generally how the company worked and the customers and things like that. But in terms of actually running it, he
Very
was only
different.
1 year
Right.
into
Right.
doing administrative tasks and doing some of the actual operating the machinery. So
And dad was tired.
yes,
Got it.
dad was, um, it- for some things I won't get into, family stuff, like he wanted out.
Yeah.
And so there was it was kind of just weird timing for
Sure.
his son. And so I fully intend to allow the son to participate in some upside. Right now I've got an SBA loan hanging on my back. So there's
Sure.
really not much upside at the
And
moment.
how does the rest of the crew, the other 10
Yeah.
folks, like the people on the floor, like how do you connect with them in this transition? Because like they could easily be like, you know what, I'm gonna just throw in the towel today because I don't know this guy and I've worked for so and so for decades, right? Like I'm sure there's people that have been there for how long? 20 years?
Yeah, there are.
Right.
And
So
so that's a separate. It's similar, but it's different. It's similar in that you have to be straight up, and that you're not there to change how they do their job, right? Because I even told them, I was like, look, I'm not a machinist. I'm not a technical guy. You guys are the experts, so you're gonna continue to do what you do. I'm gonna help you do that, hopefully better than you've done it before. Even better than you've done it before. So it's you convince them that you as a new owner are there to be a force multiplier and not a hindrance,
Yep.
basically, or not as a absolute nuisance. So that worked. And then that was kind of the initial, like, they can hear that and that's all fine and good, but they have to kind
It's
of see
always
something to
actions,
believe it. And so the action, how you follow up on that is you go in and you learn, you ask questions, you kind of show some humility of like, yeah, I'm the owner of this company, but like, you're doing something that I've never seen before. Like, explain why'd you do that? How'd you know to do that? Show me how you did that. Like, oh, that's super cool. That's awesome, dude. So kind of building them up, asking them how they do things, really kind of, and I'm fortunate that machining is a very technical field. And so a lot of machinists are it's considered a blue collar trade, but it's very high skilled. It's very high skilled and very intellectual, detail oriented, and a lot of like mental. You have to be smart to be a machinist, basically.
right.
So a lot of these guys want to do a good job, and so if you can encourage them and ask them and really try to let them be technical, let them talk technical speak at you, and you're their best friend. So, and fortunate for me, I was actually highly intellectually interested in machining.
Well, people know, whenever you speak to someone, whether you care or not.
Exactly.
And I mean,
Exactly.
and just being curious and thoughtful, that's how you build those relationships.
Exactly. Yeah.
So talk to me then how, like, does he stay on for a little bit to like sort of transition some of these customers that frankly he's built over decades? And then I want to start talking about the future. Like, where does this go and what were your plans to grow this and grow this thing?
Yeah. So, on the CNC machining side, the relationships were more transactional. So, and that's kind of how those customers like it.
Because it's like a contract manufacturing kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. So
right.
they
you
want,
make this, and the audience doesn't know.
Yeah.
You got to make 500 of these or 5,000 of these, and you do it for this price, this time, and you're the person who fulfills that. I want this widget. Cut it, make it, great, ship it to me. Done.
Yeah, I want this widget, and here is a literal blueprint on how to make the widget.
Right.
So make it to these specifications. We don't talk. Here's a PO. You send me the invoice. We're done. Like that's what those types of customers, 90% of the time, that's what they want.
And not to get too, well, I mean, that's why we're here. Do you have like what is it called? almost like vendor inventory management, where you like I the vendor
Mhm.
or I the yeah I the person who's telling you to make those parts.
Mhm.
You can manage the supply and demand so that I don't have to like, hey, dude, I'm in a crunch. I need more, or stop making that. Like, because I know some people do that,
Yeah.
right? Where they have more of a verticalized, where maybe you do the cutting, but hey, these parts actually need to get polished and painted. Oh, we don't do that. Johnny next door does it. And just walk me through a little bit of the value add. Are you just cutting the stuff? Like, what do you?
Yeah. So um, in terms of the whole supply chain from raw material to finished part, yeah, most of our parts have some kind of anodizing, laser etching. Um, deburring is kind of a given in any machining application, but um,
What's deburring?
deburring. So like when you cut metal, usually there's some sharp edges,
Oh,
or
right.
yeah.
Okay.
So cleaning that up, that's 99.9% of the time, part of making the part. But getting that done, getting the part coated, finished,
So you
and
do
then
that.
yeah. So we don't do it in house, but we have our own vendors.
Got it. Got it. Got it.
Usually when it comes down the print, very rarely will we tell a customer, we'll make you the raw part, but you got to find a vendor to,
So you do manage the, hey, we'll
yeah,
take care of it.
yep,
Right.
yeah,
Got it.
exactly, yeah. So we try to get a customer from raw material to finished part that they can plug into their assembly, soup to nuts type of thing.
Well, that's a value add, because I want a one-stop shop that
Yeah,
like, oh God, now I got to go to another person.
yeah,
Because if other people
yep,
are offering that, again, I think in business, you always ideally want the less relationship to manage,
yeah,
assuming that that person can underpromise and overdeliver what you're offering. Of course, I don't
yeah.
want to go to 3 people. I want one. Makes
Absolutely,
sense.
absolutely. And sometimes we'll work with customers if they've got a preferred vendor for anodizing or
Sure.
gold plating or whatever. So if they don't, we've got plenty, or we can find it. A lot of customers that we've taken on lately, it's a type of coating or a type of finish that we've never done before, but we'll figure it out. We'll find the right vendor. We'll take that headache off their hands. So
So that was easy because that's
Mhm.
transactional. The other side,
The other side is much more relationship based, because when if you are a customer and you have an assembly line and you've been doing it with 3, 4, 5 temps for the last 20 years, and that's the only way you've ever done it, you need to automate, but you don't know how. You don't know what robots are out there, what kind of mechanical actuators and sensors and quality control there is out there. That's where we come in, and so that's where it's much more relationship consulting.
well, yeah, you're trying to solve the
Technical.
problem.
Exactly.
This is actually what I was telling you about with that. Yeah,
Absolutely.
maybe
Absolutely.
that's an offline. I don't know, but it's so fascinating because at the end of the day, technology has changed,
Yep.
and you need better solutions because at the end of the day, the throughput needs to be faster, quicker,
Yep.
cheaper, and
Absolutely.
that we need robots.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's what now that what you see as like the future of growing this business?
Absolutely.
Okay,
So
got it.
I had mentioned earlier that 2 to 3 of these automation builds a year is kind of like half of a year's worth of the total company revenue. So if we're doing 2 to 3 builds a year, we're doing great. Now, if you can do one more build a year to 3 to 4 or 4 to 5,
$500K to $1 million.
that's
Is that right?
that's a
Something like
huge
that?
step function. Yeah, that's a huge step function in revenue growth. Whereas if I add one more CNC machine on the other side, that's going to cost me $100,000, and I need another machinist to run it, that's going to get me another 15-20%
Right.
revenue increase,
Right.
and I need more square footage.
So
So
let's just break it in that sort of consultancy type of sale. Are you taking the charge there and like, hey, here's your problem, here's how we're thinking about the solution, and is that scalable in the way that honestly like AI?
couple questions there.
Okay,
So
okay.
yeah, I personally am not the one. I personally am more focused on the CNC machining side because I recognize that the owner's son, he's much more in tune with the automation side. So he and I hired another gentleman who has been in and around the automation space for decades. So them together are the ones that are going on site and consulting with the customer, understanding the solution that they need to implement, or the problem that they have, is it even the problem that they need to be focusing on?
Right.
Because we've gone into customers' facilities. I say they have gone into customers' facilities and said, "Hey, you're asking us to look at this problem.
That's actually not the problem.
That's not the problem. Go look over there. Like that's your bottleneck. Your bottleneck is elsewhere in your facility. So let's go look over there." And we've come up with solutions that
That's so
the
cool.
customer didn't even know that they had a problem for.
Right.
So that's the more hands-on. It's harder to scale in some ways and easier to scale in other ways.
Do you have a honed in ICP for like, are we just going to focus on mid-market bottling companies, or because at the end of the day, there's going to be more patterns that, hey, we know that this is the kink in the armor every time, and we've got a better playbook to pitch and deploy, which ultimately should warrant more scale.
Yeah, where we're at right now. Our core competency there is one-off solutions that there is not yet a standard for.
Okay.
So
interesting.
The gentleman you were talking about earlier has a niche.
Yeah. Well,
And
rolling packaging.
Exactly. and packaging is generally, I don't want to say standardized, but there are companies out there similar to us, but that's all they focus on. That's their niche, is packaging, film rollers, things like that, that are even like printing, things like that are more or less standardized in the way that and there are companies with branded machinery, and they make 100 of that specific machine. And it's kind of like similar to a CNC machine where they build this machine for just that purpose, and then they ship them out.
Got it. So that's more of a commoditized
exactly.
thing.
That's a great way to put it. Where we come in is, another of our customers is doing solar panel bracket assemblies.
Okay.
So when solar panels go get installed in the field, there are these brackets that come in kind of like sub-assemblies. So the installers can, take 100 of them and go build a solar farm. There's no machine that exists that pre-builds these assemblies.
Yeah. The simple, in my mind, how I break that down is it's either a new growing market that just simply hasn't matured where it's become commoditized, or you've got sort of a legacy industry that probably is on on-premise legacy software. They may not even use software for their bottling line, so they don't have the data or the visibility to make it better or know where the kink is. So they need a consultant to tell them, oh, this is the problem, right? So it's so interesting. So now, and how are you getting that work? Like, is it?
There's a lot of word of mouth.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're actually trying to change that. We've,
in
recently,
what ways?
Just marketing. So we have hours and hours of footage of our machines running, but we're not using it to market our services in any way. So we're trying to change that.
I did see that.
Build out our website. Just taking some of that video, not editing it whatsoever, putting it on an Instagram reel, and now you're starting to market it. We haven't done that yet. We're starting to, because most of the works come word of mouth.
So do you hire an agency? What are you doing there?
Yeah, hiring an agency. They're helping us more on the CNC machining side. Because my strategy here to go a little bit broader is we've won a decent amount of work on the automation build side lately, to where that side of the business is more or less covered for the next 6 to 9 months. The CNC machining side, I want to get to be cash flow stable, to the point where it's covering all of my fixed costs for the entire business. And so my personal mandate to myself is to grow that to a point where I'm covering the fixed costs of our facility. I'm covering all the company salaries, even the folks on the automation build side, to the point where if I sold 0 automation builds for the entire year, and the CNC machining side is covering all of my fixed costs, I didn't make any money that year, but I didn't lose any money, even though I sold no machines.
100%. So I want to break down for the audience too, in that when I think about this, because whether you're an early searcher or you're looking to buy a business, at the end of the day, you've identified, okay, that the contract manufacturing is like reoccurring business, and it's more predictable. And then, which means, hey, we can predict the revenue we're going to get more, where the other side is a project-based, eat what you kill.
Absolutely.
While you're going to have more than likely higher and better margin,
Yep.
it's not predictable because how often do we need to fix that problem?
Absolutely.
I'm one every time I do a warehouse
Yeah.
or, so that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And, but, and that's always the interesting part is like, well, the consultancy side is easier to grow because I don't need a facility, right? Or I don't need like the larger warehouse space. Or do you actually do you demo the stuff in your warehouse?
Yeah, we actually build, test
Okay, you do.
everything in our own warehouse. But the reason it's a lot easier to scale is because really all I need is that warehouse. I don't need, another CNC machine.
Right.
I don't need, another machinist. Granted, I will be using my machinist to make parts that go in that machine. But if I were to sell, say I were to sell 5 machines this year, for me to sell a 6th machine, really all I need is another, I don't know, 250 square feet to actually build that machine.
Got it.
So, because until I get to that step function point of growth where I need another machine builder and I need another engineer, then that's when really the scaling comes in. But that's
warehouse utilization is pretty good.
Yeah,
to be honest.
And to get to that next step function of growth, that's 2 people versus like if I were to add 50% revenue on my CNC machining side, I would need, 4 or 5 more CNC machines and 5 more machinists. Right. So the ROI on infrastructure spend between the 2 sides of the business is much higher on the automation building side. But that's also because I have the CNC machining side building components for the automation building side.
So let's go to then on the, have you considered like buying any business so that we can get quicker to like, let me get my fixed costs and cash flow, that part, so that I can then focus on the other side of the business? Or is that not, or what is it? What's the approach here?
The approach is it's organic. It's organic at this point. I've looked at other companies, adding on to the CNC machining side. Granted, it would just be too difficult. The transition, the integration. What I'm finding, the CNC machine shops that I've been into, each one kind of has its own dialect. So they use a different CAM software, or they have their CNC machines have a different kind of controller, or
it's almost like you got to learn a new business, and it's just not, the juice isn't worth the squeeze.
Yeah, they do their setups a little bit differently. Like unless I were to go into a company and set the expectations that we're going to change everything on how they do their work, which, like I told you earlier, when I stepped into this company, that's exactly what I told them I wasn't going to do.
Yeah. So it's a bit of a conundrum.
It's an entire culture shift.
Yeah.
It would be an entire, I would have to transform the entire culture of another CNC shop to integrate them into my business. And it's easier to just buy another machine, because also likely any CNC machine shop that's for sale has 25, 30-year-old equipment, to the point where I'm going to have to put 50 grand into repairing 3 or 4 machines when I could put that 50 grand into, a couple down payments on a couple new machines.
Right.
So,
right.
It's buy versus build. And so far from what I've seen on the add-on opportunities,
it doesn't make sense.
The build is the much more appealing case.
So let's kind of talk about a little bit as we wrap up. So where are we at today? Was it a J curve? Did we grow the business? And where are we gonna head? Where are we gonna go?
The dreaded J curve. So where I think we are 2 years. It's 2 years and like a week, the anniversary of closing.
Oh, gosh.
I think we're on the upswing of the J curve.
Great.
Because 2024 was the year of learning the business.
Yeah.
2025 was the year of reinvesting in the business, understanding the problems and finding the solutions. So whether that was personnel changes, buying new equipment, repairing old equipment, other infrastructure like toolboxes and kind of that support, all those support tooling and things like that. We put a lot of money into building all of that out in 2025, and profitability took a hit. Profitability, cash flow, all those financial metrics took a hit. And now now that we're at a point where our quality is much better, our delivery is much better, now we're hitting the marketing. And so looking to add more customers, we've opened up some capacity. Before, our top customer was kind of sucking all the air out of the room in terms of our machining capacity. We've revamped our setup method for that customer. So now we can turn over jobs a lot quicker. And that allowed us to do a lot more with the same amount of equipment. So now it's time to add customers to fill in, to kind of backfill that capacity. So I think that's where we're at on the upswing of the J curve. Is got a lot of the fundamentals back down, and looking to kind of add on top of the foundation.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
And you're gonna run this for?
Honestly, like it's incredibly stressful, but at the end of the day, like I'm having so much fun.
That's awesome.
Like I could see, a potential exit way off in the future, but like this isn't a situation where it's like, all right, I'm going to build this company up, exit it in 5 years, and then, go buy another one. Like I would have way more fun, way more personal satisfaction building this company up over the next 5 years, and then like continuing to work with it, putting someone in as CEO, and then continuing to run like from the as like a chairman capacity type of thing, where I'm out promoting the business, continuing to sell. If I want to go in, I can go in and run some machines if I really want to, and
Sure.
and that would be much more satisfying to me than kind of exiting completely. It's at this point it's really become part of my identity at this point.
Yeah.
Like it's only been 2 years, but this is what I think about day in, day out. Can't sleep, wake up 3 in the morning, and that's
we're
that's
making
what's on the mind.
we're making unsexy sexy. So
absolutely.
well, listen, I really appreciate you coming in
Yeah.
and chopping it up here with me.
Yeah.
Hopefully not the last time you come in, but I got to go see the shop.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's an hour away.
All right.
We'll do it.
I'm in. Thank you.
Absolutely.